Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. My name is Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer, who will be doing a demonstration at the beginning of, I believe, user testing. I think it's going to be a very good session, by the way, but I'll also be here to answer your questions. So now would be a great time for you to type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Let me take you off mute, or you need to take yourself off mute. I'm going to make you a presenter there, Dion. And there you are.
Awesome. Well, hello, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm super excited to see the automated testing that you are going to be demonstrating today. So
oh yeah, it's going to be fun. Actually, I had a lot of fun putting this together, and I think it's going to be one of those that people really enjoy. So my name's Dion McCormick. Thank you very much, Dave. As always, we really enjoy having you accompany us on a weekly basis. And first and foremost, this is about you and your questions. So please take the time to go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel and type those in. By the way, you can always send those to us ahead of time at guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com, and we'll be more than glad to help out and do whatever we can to help you out there. So phenomenal stuff going on, lots of cool new features coming down the road, and just things are hopping around here. In fact, I don't know if you I know that Dave is now, we're starting to do some transform demonstrations and other pieces like that. So if you have interest in that, please send us a email, the guides at alphasoftware.com. That's coming together very, very quickly and very, very nicely. And lots of new capabilities are being added to transform in the near future. And we'll be doing another update on that very quickly, or in the very near future. As I mentioned, as soon as those are available, we'll get out there and show everybody what's going on. Just neat stuff, really doing it. So a couple quick things. First, again, put your questions in there. Two, remind you that registration is open for the DEFCON 2018. Make sure to go to the alphasoftware.com/DevCon 2018 and sign up there. You can register. I've already got my tickets, and in fact, I've booked my Disney tickets because, hey, since I'm in Orlando, Florida, I can take an opportunity to take my children and go there, so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a great event, and we have so many great things for that. I mean, given all the things that are going to be deployed, you need to be there to really dig in and see all the things that are part of the Alpha product by the end of this year. It's just going to be crazy. So again, that's alphasoftware.com/DevCon 2018, and please check it out. We're going to have a great time there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive in and talk a little bit more. We started our series about testing last week, and it's really, you know, this is an extension of our DevOps series, which talks about how you can create an overall development process that encompasses all the different elements together and apply automation where it makes sense. And we always talk about the fact that, you know, Alpha is a low-code platform, so you can actually condense this cycle time very quickly. But, you know, there's a lot of other elements that are associated with it. We really don't have dev build because we basically are a low-code development platform, but you have test and release and other things like there. So we've been talking about the different technologies that go around Alpha and how Alpha interacts with those technologies to be able to automate and to create a cycle that can be done very quickly, but also in a very controlled and understood manner. And often, and why we want to concentrate on this test section right here is because that's often one of those little overlooked things, like, well, we'll just test it when we get out there, or the users will test it and the other things. And, you know, hey, you know, you can do what you can do in your environment, but what we find is that the people who invest in the test aspect of their overall process end up with better results, faster deployments, and most importantly, more confidence in what they're doing. And if anything, it's an accelerant because it allows you to quickly feel confident that you can innovate within your system. So often, you know, you get your first version out, and then there's some tweaks, bug fixes, and then it stabilizes, and then obviously you come up with great ideas, or your clients that they want to add some really cool new capabilities, extend the platform to do even more from what they do. And so there's always the balancing act of, yeah, I want to add these new features, I want to need these aspects, but you know, oh man, I've got to refactor some code, and I've got to get things kind of, there's just sometimes a little reluctance because it's like, well, I don't want to break what's already working. I just went through that whole deployment and follow up and got everything kind of working, and nobody's calling and everything's smooth, and now want to add all these things. So what will happen is that without an effective test strategy, you'll find out that you're going to be slower on the get-go to release new versions, and your confidence level won't be there. And so I think by focusing on the testing aspect, and why we brought this into our DevOps series, is that you're going to find out that you can innovate and deploy quickly with high level of confidence, which is really critical, which does two things. One is that you feel better, you're more confident, your clients are happier, but also beyond that is that you're going to be able to move quicker because you can say, hey, I can make those changes, I can do it, and I can deploy and not have really long cycles between that because I have more confidence in terms of doing it. So we started our testing series, and the focus of this series is all about how can we create a test environment, how can we interface existing test methodologies and technologies with Alpha. And in fact, we've structured it into 4 elements. We've done the first one, which was structuring your app for testing. Today, we're going to be talking about web app testing, ways that you can implement third-party tools to help you test your web app and bring confidence. Then we're going to have a little break because we'll talk about it at the end, but won't be available for the next 2 weeks because of different scheduling and other things like that. But then we're diving into mobile app testing and build process, and we may also have another webinar. I think we have an impending release, so we'll want to go over those kind of pieces there. So the first one was about how to structure your application, and what we dove into it is the ability to test your business logic. And so the really technique, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing, there's a great, we recorded the video last week, it's online and available to you, was the idea of first centralizing your data code or your logic code into a set of libraries, modules, or classes. So you have all of your code in one place. And by the way, I focus on XBasic, but we also have Node.js, so you can achieve the same thing from there. And then what you can do is using the XBasic script editor, you can exercise that before you even connect it into your user interfaces. Then make sure it's working. And then you can create test series where you can run multiple tests against that logic to make sure it's working perfectly. Then you can connect it into your user interface and make sure that it works great. And the great thing about that is if you're using classes, you're actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The first is that you're now centralizing your code, making it more manageable, more ability to manage and to deploy it and reuse that code, but also you're putting yourself into a position to be able to reuse it as web APIs down the road when those release capabilities are coming, which are coming very quickly. So that was a really good series. It showed we actually got some really good feedback. In fact, some really good suggestions in terms of how to improve it and the other pieces there. So that went real well. So we covered that last week, but today we're going to continue our series and we're going to talk about web app testing. So now there's the idea of testing your logic, but then now I've kind of put it all together and I want to put it up onto a website and walk through it. So obviously you could hire someone who could do manual testing, or your clients could do manual testing, or your users could do manual testing where they log in, they exercise it, and sometimes there's no way around that. But if you kind of have a good disciplined test process, there's no reason why you can't put in place success before you get to that point. Now, why would I do that? I've already tested my business logic. Well, you're actually tying the business logic to that, and you're going to be doing some development testing. But why do you want to do that? And the number one thing is called unintended consequences. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with this. And when you do your first version, this is usually happening after your first version is deployed, you're saying, okay, we're going to add these features. We're going to add these user interface things. We're going to do this. And then you go, oh, man, I forgot. If I did that, it kind of broke this, or things didn't work there. So what you want to do is say, hey, certain things work. Let's make sure they continue working. And then I can then just test the element there. And most importantly is I can capture these unintended consequences. Now, no developer is perfect. Reality is most of our developers are perfect. So I have to put that out there. But generally, no developer is perfect. So especially when the systems get more complex, there's no way for you to envision all the impacts of your changes. I mean, you could, but it could slow you down, and there's just, hey, slips happen, things happen, and these things you want to protect against. So the reality is systems grow more complex over time. If I look at a lot of the clients I've worked with, they start out small, but over time, features are added, capabilities, integrations are added, and they just become more complex. And the more complex they are, then the more, if you make a change, the potential for an error to be induced. So let me go here. So the last but most importantly, and I like this one the most, of why you want to really adopt a lot of test strategies and include those so you can sleep at night. It takes away a lot of the anxiety. If I'm ready to go, I want to deploy this thing. I want to make sure that any changes I've made are correct, but also more importantly, I haven't broken something else. And if I can do that, and without just like deploying and holding my fingers crossed and praying that it's going to work great, if there was a mechanical way to do that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And trust me, the coolest thing about today is that it is so easy, there is really no reason why not to do it. And I've actually picked, there's many tools to do this, and this is specifically automating, sort of pretending to be a person on the web browser and automating the process of testing some. There's actually a lot of tools out there, but I've found one in particular that I've been starting to use, and I really like it. It's just really very well built and very well thought out. And again, once you see it, I think you'll be excited. Now, underlying all this is that I'm sure if anybody else has done any kind of web app testing and other pieces there, Selenium is really kind of the king of the hill. Now, there's a number of different ones out there, but Selenium, and you can go and get more data about it at seleniumhq.org, is really the first one out there, and it's really well supported, and most tools use what is called Selenium scripts and other pieces. And in fact, this tool allows you to kind of use these technologies here. So this is not an exhaustive exploration of web testing tools. There's many out there. There's free ones, there's open source ones, there's paid ones. The one I'm going to show you today is a paid one. And it's up to you really on which you adopt. And you don't have to do the one we're talking about. It's just one I like and going to share with you. But to really fundamentally show you how testing doesn't have to be a painful situation from that standpoint there. So if you really want to dive in, you can go to seleniumhq.org, and there's a ton of great data about web testing and concepts and other information that are associated there. But the one I'm going to show today is Ghost Inspector, and I found it a while back, and I really like it. I think it's a very powerful, and there's actually a free level you can join just to kind of play with it and test it out. Fairly limited, you got to bump up when you go there. But if you consider how much time, and this is an important aspect, and we'll come back and talk about it. Everybody goes, well, testing is going to take time and testing is going to cost money, but how much is the cost of downtime on your system? And again, I'm not trying to sell you this tool. I'm just trying to give you a perspective that building in test is a really good way to reduce the costs of your developments, because bugs are expensive, especially when they're found after deployment, because you may have to bring the system down, your customers aren't as happy, there's the time and energy that you have to go in and fix these things instead of fixing them before they're out in the wild. And so there's just a lot of expense that's involved with the cost of bugs and things happening. That better, and most importantly, is not even the expense, but your time is more better spent developing new features, new capabilities, expanding and moving forward. So again, there are free options out there, but you have to balance, what's the cost of a free option if I have to do a lot of the work versus something else that does a lot of the work for me. Maybe there's a good trade-off there. So that said, let's do a demonstration, and then I'll really blow it out from here. So I'm going to go into my development environment. And I have gone, and we actually did this last week. We built a thing called the loan calculator. And what the loan calculator did was that it was a very simple interface that allowed you to put in an amount and a term, hit a calculate button, you get a monthly payment. So let me go ahead and do that. So let's say my amount is 10,000, I've got 10 term, I hit calculate there. Now, the key underlying is the actual code was in an XBasic class. So I put all my code in this class, and then I showed last week how you could automate the testing of that code. So we could define to make sure the XBasic, but now we're taking the next level up. I went ahead and took that code and made this button to be an XBasic callback, and I basically run that code. So I feel very confident now that my code that I put together works well. It handles errors, it does everything I need to do. But now I kind of want to tie it, and this is a very simplistic, but when you start having a bunch of different things together, it can get pretty complex pretty quickly. So what I want to be able to do is automate essentially the way a person would go through and put this together. So I'm going to go ahead and do something here. I'm going to go to www.giantkillerdemo/Sloan calculator. I think that's it. Let me make sure I put it at the right place. Yep. Okay. Nope, that wasn't that one. Let's go. Let me find out where I put that. Bear with me, everybody. Let's see. It was called testing series. How logical of me. You know, that'll be part of our good naming practices as part of our overview. So, okay, there we go. So as you can see, I've deployed this up onto my server, and why is it not? /index. And it might be called test series. I'm sorry, everybody. There we go. Golly, what's going on here? Did I test testing series? Oh man.
Clever.
There we go.
All right.
Oh wait, what's going on here? Sorry, I want to make sure it's on there. There we go. Whatever. Okay, so, oh, I know what. When I deployed it, by the way, just as a little note, when you deploy to, I'm deploying to an IIS server here, you have to tell it what the default page is. And when I deployed it, I left this. I actually should be saying it's index. So make sure you set that, by the way, everybody. And then what happens is, notice, I'm going to copy this, but watch what happens when I put in testing series without a page, okay? You'll notice that, oh, you know, I can't, well, it's now going to work okay, but it will try to go to another page. So just a little word to the wise, that's why we're running there. So anyway, we'll go ahead and do the testing here. Okay, so I'm going to put in my thing, and I'm going to go 20, and I'm going to hit calculate, and worked perfectly. Great, all good. Well, I could do that. That's testing. And I could redo this and I can say, oh, I'm going to try 20,000. Although I've kind of checked out my logic, but maybe I'm clicking 3 buttons and I'm making sure like a panel shows. I mean, this is super simple for a purpose, but you know, we have other things that we need to do, and there could be complex interactions going on. Like I have to select a client and then I want to see the record on the right. And then if I click this button, it goes to this page and things like that. So I could sit there and hire someone to go through this, or I could do it myself, or I could use a tool called Ghost Inspector. And it's from a company called ghostinspector.com. And what happens is when you sign up, they're going to install into your browser a little extension, in this case, the Chrome browser. And I think they support Firefox also now. So what I do is I go, okay, cool. So I've got this here. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to say create a new test. I'm going to say start recording. Click start recording. Okay, notice it's turned green up here. So now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to put in 10,000 and I'm going to put 50 and I'm going to hit calculate. And there's 20 right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say I'm finished recording, and I'll call this new web test, webinar test 1. And then you can create a test suite. So I'll go and I'll say save this test. Okay, so now what I can do is I can log on to the Ghost Inspector system. I'm going to go in here and you'll see I have my new test here called Webinar Test 1. So what it's done is it's recorded my actions and then put it on there. And notice when it did it, immediately did a test here. So what I want to do is now, I've now recorded that. Now watch what happens. I'm going to click Run Test. So what's going to happen is that it's now going to rerun that test, and it's going to go to that web page. It's going to enter the data and hit calculate, and then it's going to come back. So, you know, very straightforward, but it's running. And what's cool about this is notice this is not running on my machine. It runs on AWS. They spin up browsers in an environment, and so it's hitting it not even from my development machine out there. So I don't even have to be logged on to run this. I can be anywhere. It's really cool. So you'll notice that it passed. So I'm going to go into that, and you'll see that it shows me, okay, my last test was at this time. Test duration was 12. It used Firefox. It was in Northern Virginia. Here's the URL, and here are the steps. It clicked on my amount. It clicked on the amount. It put in the amount, it put the amount in the term, and then it clicked on this button there. So all this is doing right here is just running it. And notice what's kind of cool. It captured a screenshot for me automatically. Now that's kind of boring, meaning that, okay, great. What this is good for is if I just want to test the navigation in my system, I can do that, and then if something weird happens, it's going to throw, but that really isn't as valuable. So let's go back in, and let's make this test a little bit more interesting. So I'm now going to go here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a new test. I could go edit the test, but I'll go ahead and record it. And I'm going to say start recording, and I'm going to go here, I'm going to say 20,000, 10, calculate. Now notice it calculated 200. Now what I want to do is say, hey, you know what? Let's have the system check to see if this worked correctly. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to click make an assertion. And I'm going to click on this right here, and notice I can click on anything. So I could say, hey, make sure this, like if I navigate to a page, that there's an icon shown or a piece of text or something. So I'm going to click here, and you'll notice that the assertion has been added. So what it did, it recorded the state of this little control. So now I'm going to say, finish recording. I'm going to call this webinar test 2, and I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to click save this test. Okay, and now I've got my new test on there. So as you can see, I can create tests very rapidly. So I'll go here. You'll see it's running, it runs the test first time just to see if anything weird's going on. But here's my first test, here's my second test. Okay, so give it a moment while it runs there. Okay, it passed, that's good news. But now what I can do is let's look at this test real quick. This is what it did. You'll look at the same thing. It clicked on amount, it entered my 20,000, my 10, then it clicked on that, and then it looked at my monthly payment and it said, hey, does it contain this? And it took a screenshot of it. Okay, so now I can run this test and watch what happens. So it's running the test. You can see it's running it right here. And in a few moments, this is such a fun tool. And I'm going to show you how it gets even more amazing in a moment. What I like is there wasn't any setup. I just started doing it. That was one of the cool things. Oh, it passed. So you can see it passed there. All good there. Now let's go ahead and have some fun. I'm going to edit this test step. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to put in 100. Let's break this thing. Okay, so I've changed my, oops, did it do that? Wait, edit 100. Okay. And let me make sure that looks right. Why didn't it, it's not showing that, so it may be just a refresh thing. Oh, they have to test their stuff. Why is that? Let's go ahead and edit that. That's weird. It should be sitting there. It's showing here, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, so anyway, let's run this now. Okay, I've updated my test settings. I'm going to go ahead and run this test. So now it's queuing it up. It's running it. Notice it's running it on its own little browser and stuff like that. And in a few moments, we'll see what happens. And I need the music, Jeopardy music. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. It's still going. It's taking a little longer this time. Maybe it's timing out or something like that. Yeah, make sure that's there. Oh, it's taking a little longer. Maybe it's timing out to look for assertion or something. Ah, there we go. Uh-oh. It failed. So actually, if I've got like a bunch of, you can tie all these together. You can say, oh my God, I've got a failing test. Let's go look at that test. Okay. And notice it tells me exactly where it failed. So all of this worked. It put the data in, it clicked the button, but then all of a sudden it said, oh, it didn't contain that text 100. And now I can go here and say, oh, look, it says 200. So it actually captures, and it actually captures videos, screenshots. So when something fails and it doesn't expect it, it's really pretty cool. Pretty neat there. Now that's pretty cool. So I can go in and fix this test and say now, but here's a couple things that are really cool. And then I'm going to show you the most cool thing. First, you can put these together into what's called a suite. And I can say run the entire suite. So it can run all of these one after another for me automatically. And I can run this on a schedule. I can say every night or every hour or daily run this schedule, or you can do it manually. So literally you could be having this test site run, you could be doing daily builds and running these tests and trapping what goes wrong before there. Now you have to take into account you might be changing stuff, but you can do this. And then you can also edit these steps really readily. So I can go into these steps and I can like change things and modify them. The other thing that's cool about these steps is I can actually take a series of steps and say, save that as kind of like a macro, at like logging onto the system. And then whenever I have another test, I don't have to re-record all those. I can say, do the login, then do these other steps here, which is really powerful because obviously you start segmenting your tests into functional pieces. Like I'm doing the dashboard, I'm doing the things along those lines. But check this out, watch. I can actually watch a video of it too. This is so cool. There goes my 20,000, there's my 10, there's calculate, 200. So what's great is that a screenshot's great, but a video will actually show you if like something else showed up on the screen or something weird happened, and that's all done for you. Now there's one last cool thing about it, is that what you're gonna wanna do is much like when you're doing individual logic testing, you may wanna have a bunch of different conditions. And so you may have 20 different conditions. I'm this person and I log in and I enter in this, in this situation I want to do this, there. Like let's say you had like 3 parameters or something like that. Well, what you can do, which is kind of cool, is I've already done one here. It's called example test data driven. So what I did is I recorded my regular test, but then what I did is, let's go ahead and edit this. What I did is I made this parameter driven, and that's just a quick step where what you can do is instead of putting in a fixed piece here, I can say, oh, in the amount, insert amount. In the term, insert term. In here, insert monthly payment. So you parameterize your test, which is very powerful. Now what I can do is I'm going to leave the editor, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say more, run this test with spreadsheet data. And so basically it wants me to upload a CSV file with these columns will match my little thing. So I'm going to select the files, going to go to my desktop, just go to my desktop, and is it, where, let me make sure, hold on a second, I got to make my, where I'm going to pause for a second, go, where did I put my test here? Oh, I know what happened. Okay, let me go here, let me select file. Okay. I didn't save it as CSV, so let's find where that's at. Where did I put my, okay, wait a second here. Cancel here, wait a second. Let me find that real quick. It's basically, I'm looking for a CSV file I already created, but I might have moved it. Where did I put it on desktop? I know where I put it. Okay. Again, naming conventions, very, very important. So let's go ahead and go more, run this with spreadsheet data. Let's select the file and review. I'll go to the desktop. I didn't name it as CSV. Here's my test data, and I'm going to open it up. Okay, so here's my test. I have an amount of 1,000, 10, and monthly payment of this, 20, this. And so I've created this test base, and you know, it's important, you may want to put in positive and negative assertions. So I'm going to now run this test with those 3. So notice what it did. It immediately spawned 3 different browsers in the background on their system. Notice I'm not using any of my system right here. Also notice I'm not even going to alpha or anything else, it's just running it. Up, okay, 1 completed, and there we go. There's the latest, so those are the tests that did there. So what it allows you to do is actually pre-code and have these things run. So you'll notice it did 3 runs. Here's my first run, my second run, and my third run. And I can go in there and look at each one of them, and notice this is using 100. And then I could go here and look here. This one's, this was my 300. So now what's awesome is I just ran all these tests and they're done. And I could schedule that to go every night. So if I go in there and screw something up, then it's going to tell me. Now, actually, what's even cooler, I'll cut it off there, but it can detect like if things look different on the screen and stuff like that. But as you notice, much like low-code development, this is low-code testing. I didn't have to write a script. Everything's point and click. I could make it parameter driven. And I'll tell you, it's a ball. It's a real fun ball to use, and it's really good. And there's a lot of very powerful. So let's say down the road, you're like, okay, I need to send these test scripts overseas to have someone else do it or another test company. You can actually download them in what's called Selenium format, which then they can use. So it's a very open kind of tool from there. One thing about this is that it doesn't really do at this time performance testing or load testing. It does record information. So it records how long each of these steps took. And you can kind of fake it out by like saying, do the same test 100 times and it will spawn 100 browsers and hit that there. But this is not really meant to be a performance testing tool. There are other better load testing performance. But you can get that data out of this. But this is more just functional testing from there. But again, if you have these Selenium scripts, you can hand them off to someone else and they can run these Selenium scripts in performance-based tools like JTest and other things like that and collect that kind of data. Say, okay, I want to pretend there's 100 people hitting this loan calculator at one time. Then you can do that within these other tools. I think that's probably on their dashboard, but there's a lot of issues around that, and I think they're just saying, hey, let's make it easy there. But it's called Ghost Inspector. The plans are very aggressive. You know, again, you got to decide what your time is valuable. They have a free one. 100 tests runs monthly, so that allows you to play with it. I mean, the reality is I did like 10 tests right now, so it runs out pretty quickly there. You can do these things. It's about $71 a month for the small one. You're talking about 10,000 tests. Well, that's probably impressive. 5 people can be working on it, which is really good. And it goes up from there, and you know, can do that. So, but if you think about it, like if I found one bug, my guess is that I probably saved my $71. And again, Alpha does not get any compensation from Ghost Inspector. There are lots of other companies out there, but I can tell you this stuff works really easy and it works really good. And it's going to allow you, and the question is, you know, what's your price of sleeping at night, you know, from that standpoint, you have to decide. But that, I'm going to wrap it up here. Remember, this is super important. Even if you do the minimal amount of testing, any testing is better than no testing at all. For that reason of, it starts to include in your overall development discipline the fact that when you have a developer opera, there is a test phase, and that test phase is not necessarily send it out and let your customers and users do that. You do some of that. And here's the interesting thing, and this is kind of cool. And this, let me wrap up, and that I want to show you kind of another concept that's very powerful. And this will come into play later on, but it allows you to put this test together. You don't have to do this massive Taj Mahal test. As you saw, I, within a matter of like 5 minutes, created the very simple test. And hey, at the very least, it's going to tell me if the page loads, because if the page doesn't load, it's going to report that that system failed. So if I included and republished the page and it had an error on it and threw a 500 or did something else, I'm going to see that. So you're going to catch those unintended consequences. And as you can see, what you can do is with this kind of technology, where is it here? There we go. With this kind of technology here, what I can do is start small, build some modularized test, then over time use them together, and eventually I could have 100, 200 tests running. You know, you'll get some more noise because, you know, when you've changed something, you know, you may not have figured out you'll get a fail, you look at it. But after you run this guy, I feel so much more confident that my little loan calculator works, that I can send that to people and I know it's going to function both at the code level down low, because I probably have an extensive level of test there for all the different error conditions. And that's the thing too, is you notice I was only testing like successful things. Like if this said, oh, out of bounds or something like that, you could test those kind of things, because when you do something in here like a required, it's going to throw up a little thing. You can capture that in the assertion saying, if I put this here, like I skip a term, I can grab that. Now, the last thing I want to mention on this is that, guess what? You can build your tests before you actually develop a line of code. So what you could do actually, which is kind of fun, a different concept, is that when you develop this, you could put together your UX here and then fake, and instead of having live code, you could just say, hey, take this information, and then set the value to be this. So it's kind of a canned response. But then I could test with my system to make sure this page loads, that if I put in here, the callback works, and that some information is showing up here. So you can actually kind of like put test almost at the forefront. And a lot of people say write your test before you develop your code to do that thing. But especially this comes in powerful with navigation issues. Like I had a client, and I was doing this for a client, where they had different people logging into the system. And so what they do is when they log in, they want to see a different home screen. Well, I could go through and log in all those people, or I could create a script where it says log in as this person, make sure this screen shows up. Very simple kind of stuff. And in fact, I was able to make it parameter driven because I knew one of the fields on the home page would be saying hello administrator or hello user or something like that. And what's great is, if you have 10 different roles with different things, I created those tests, and within a matter of a couple minutes, I knew everything was working perfectly. And what's really good is the next time I release, I click that button and I know, oh, good, I haven't screwed up my navigation, that the things are working well. And there's a lot more facilities in there. You can add your own JavaScript and stuff, really powerful stuff. And again, use any tool you want, but I'll tell you, automating that test will allow you to sleep at night. You're going to be more confident as a developer. And in fact, your clients will appreciate it more because they're going to be spending their time less finding simple things that could have been caught beforehand and more time enjoying your system and being able to do it from there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over back to my esteemed colleague Dave and see what questions we may have.
Excellent. So the first question we had, but I believe you actually covered it, is can you do these tests when you're using the security framework?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll notice that for me to run these tests, I didn't do it on my local machine. I actually deployed it to my server because they need to access that web location from there. But this will work perfect with the web security. In fact, I've done tests where you go to a login page, you put in the username and password, it logs you in and go to the next page and you say, did I log in? Did my login work? Did I have my right credentials? Did it go to the right page after I logged in? So the answer is absolutely yes. And in fact, that's one of the most critical things is that what keeps me up at night is not that the system's basically going to work, is that if you have different people logging on, that someone may see what they shouldn't see. It's just kind of, especially if you built a multi-tenant environment, that's always a key issue, is that if customer A logs in and you don't want them seeing customer B data. So it's hyper critical to make sure that your navigation and your filtering is all working correctly. And this is a very easy way to do that within there. But a security system works great. It's fully functional. You could even automate scripts of going in and adding a user through a UX, then logging out and logging back in as that user, and then deleting that user. All those kind of things are possible within the system.
Cool. I noticed before that you had an option to have it run a test every 30 minutes or every day or something like that. So could you use that as some sort of monitoring capability? Is it possible, for example, for it to email you the results of the tests, or is it up to you to come and check in? Oh, okay.
Right here. Yep. Basically, what you do is say, email me, or so email would just go in and, send you an email like, hey, and you can say like, has the email, it'll tell you, okay, that everything ran, or only email me when things are wrong, kind of thing. So it allows you to do that. Another cool thing is it allows you to do webhooks. So like, for instance, where you may use this is, let's say you're using Jira or Assembla or one of these ticket systems. You can actually have it automatically generate a ticket in those systems. So you don't even get an email, or, it goes right into your ticket system saying there's a test failure, and your developer, if you're on a team developer, then that developer is going to see a ticket saying one of your tests failed. So there's some really cool there, but it's built into it. And as you can see, you can set a schedule. You can set what are called a variable. And what's cool about variables is that if you're running the test for one company, like let's say you had a multi-tenancy, you could use the spreadsheet concept, or you could set up variables to kind of say, oh, I'm kind of testing company A, so this is my variables for login. And then when you create this suite, it's going to run with those variables, and you can refer to those variables in your scripts. And then there's things like test defaults where you are, details, like if I want to test it. By the way, this is kind of cool because you can test on different browsers, make sure you don't have weird browser kind of things, and a lot of different things in terms of what you want to do there. Concurrency. You could, right now it fires up all these tests to do them all at one time, but you could set up concurrency to say, well, do this case, only do it a couple at a time so I don't overload my server. I'm not really doing stress testing from that standpoint there. And works, very cool stuff there. And in fact, they have a full API that's around this. So if you wanted to trigger these tests from something else, you could actually call an API and say, run this now. And that's where people, when they're talking about automating their system, what people are starting to see is that their developers will code, they'll build, they'll actually check it into Git repository. That Git repository will trigger a test run, and then that test run will trigger a like a webhook that then puts any failures into your information, your ticket system. And so they literally, once people checks in, you can automatically say, I'm not even gonna wait for the developer. I'm gonna have them run a test suite and make sure nothing's been broken. And so therefore you can catch these things early and create automation so that you don't have to worry about someone remembering to run the test before they deploy their code. And actually what you can do in Git, which is kind of cool, and I'm getting a little bit too in the weeds, but you could check it in on a branch. That branch will run a test against that, and then it won't allow you to actually check it into the main area until all the tests pass. So the person isn't introducing into the general source code stuff or into the general files stuff that doesn't pass tests. Now remember, when you make changes, you may make changes. So for instance, I may go in here and I may change and add a new field or something like that. Well, you have to allocate going back in and modifying your tests and re-recording maybe some of them. So that's why you want to make your tests very granular, because you may be re-recording parts of it. So you don't want to always create it with a login in this. You create them as separate. But long-winded, the answer is absolutely. There's a lot of automation, and you want to take advantage of that automation. So you can say every night, gosh darn it, I know that my system has been exercised, and if anything breaks, and hey, if it breaks, you may know it's going to break. Like, oh, I know that calculator, I'm midway through the stuff, it's going to break. So you don't actually have to take action on it. But once it's fixed and ready, you can rerun those tests, and the next night you're going to know what's going on, and you're going to have that confidence level, which is critical and very, very powerful. It really, I can't tell you how much, once you have a good test structure in place, your ability to move quickly and code and not worry really changes your perspective. You're saying, let's do more quicker and faster, because I know I have a safety net where I'm going to catch stuff before it gets out into the wild.
Excellent. Actually, I like this question a lot. And here it is.
Gold star for that.
Here comes a gold star question. All right. Can you programmatically run a test so that you could set it to have the test run automatically after you publish, for example?
Alpha, there's no built-in alpha. There's not like a publish and do something. Well, let's look at that. Let me correct that.
But presumably there are methods that you could say.
Well, the way I would do it is
updated or okay.
Is what I would do is on my login page, I put some kind of switch. And when someone hits that login page and I say, has this been hit before on this version or whatever? So there's a little maintenance that has to go in there. Like then what would happen is you could actually use an alpha xbasic statement to call the URL to trigger that test. So you could use the API. So absolutely, you could do it as sort of, I don't know if you can really do it. There's not like a after I test run this xbasic script kind of thing in alpha, but you could create a scheme where on wherever the landing page is for your application, you could put a switch in there that says, okay, has someone been here? Yes. Okay. Or if they have not been there, then run the test. Then what you do is you set a switch saying this has been run, and the next time you publish, it either looks at the database for a switch or a file that's on there or something like that. Actually, what you could do is probably have a file that's part of your deployment that you publish up and then it adds. So yeah, there's ways to do it. There's no built-in way within the profile to trigger something like that. Once you've published it, like, okay, after publish, run this script, but you could definitely do it.
Let's say in the like a future version of alpha, we added some event, or you found some way to programmatically monitor to see when something was published. In the service that you just showed us, is there a way to call a URL, maybe an API or something like that?
See. Yes, I'm sorry. Let me go there. Really, yes, the answer is correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So the idea behind it is that if I go to my dashboard and then go to account settings, and then I have integrations, you'll notice they already have some integrations.
Okay.
So these are pre-made things like, if people use Slack, it will automatically send you a Slack message of things that are going on. GitHub's cool because it will allow you to tie your test results to your commit and pull requests. That's what I was talking about there. But you can also authorize third-party applications. And what that does is you can actually say, and it gives you an API. And in fact, if I go to the help documentation and go to the, it shows you how to do some integration stuff. But here's an overview. Here's the execute test. Okay, so you can call this API-CoastInspector.com suite. The suite ID, which is, if I go back to my dashboard, you'll see I have 2 different suites. So this is a series of tests here. And I think you can get down to the individual tests. Execute, you submit it the API key, and you can actually give it an alternative start URL. And so once you call this from Alpha, then this will take off and it will just go ahead and start running it in the background. And that's one of the cool things is since it's a cloud-hosted system, you don't have to worry about if your machine's up or anything else. It's built on AWS, so these guys have it up and running. So that night, you just call that API, you're good to go. And in fact, with Alpha's new and improved API capabilities coming out very soon, this is going to be child's play to be able to do it. You're going to see some really cool stuff there. So.
Excellent.
Yep, and then this is what you get back. So actually what's kind of cool about it is that you can actually programmatically call and get the results from a suite, and it will tell you what happened on it. So you don't even have to go into their system. You could actually pull it back and put it in your own database or something like that, or lots of cool things you could do because it's just JSON. You could create a little dashboard for yourself where this calls an API, it calls back, you grab that data results and put it into your database and then show a Alpha grid with this data that's associated with it. Pretty fun. A lot of cool stuff you can do.
Very cool. Awesome. I don't see a lot more testing questions, so we will go on to other Alpha Anywhere questions. One person asked, this is a general question, actually I could ask of the whole audience, and is there any free ticketing systems, like a support ticket system that's free of charge or cheap that people are using that they like?
Golly, I don't know any off the top of my head. Most of them end up charging pretty quickly because too many people sign up.
Once you get past, yeah, that's probably the case. All right. Well, if we
they're like, oh my God, I have to pay all these people for servers, and nobody's paying me money. And I think there are out there. I haven't explored that in a while. Probably a year back, I was looking at that. So.
All right. Cool.
There's the big dog Jira, and actually Jira, I think they even have a free.
They might have a lot of them have free tiers.
Level.
Yeah.
Yeah, but problem with Jira, just to give everybody a heads up, is that so yeah, you can try it for free, but then what happens with Jira, and this is not an indictment of them because they're in business and stuff like that.
Exponential pricing.
Yeah. So what happens is you start, you get like your first 5, you're good, but then the moment you hit 6, it's like boom, it's a big dollar amount, and then the next level is like 50 users.
Right there you go. 10 is $10 for 25 is 2,000.
And I think, is that per month? I think that's per month. So, and it's why they're a public company and doing very well. But Jira is amazing. Most large development organizations run off of it because it has incredible integrations and it scales and you can configure it and all that stuff. But there's a ton of ticket systems out there. And and you don't need a real fancy one. The only thing I would look at your ticket system, and if you're starting out, just get something that's easy to use, especially for your end customers. Because if you can get your end customers to use the ticket system, you get away from the email hell where they say, "Oh, this is broken," and So the other part is you also definitely want, and most do this, is have some kind of level of API on it, because what it will do is set your ability to automate things in the future if there's an API. So a lot of fun stuff there. Right. But we'll look around and see if we can find any examples out there. But Jira is a good one. Assembla is another one, although they've kind of changed their business model. They used to be more ticket system, and now they're doing more enterprise cloud version control, but they have an incredibly good ticket system on there. And worst comes to worst, you could build your own.
Zendesk is another one, if I recall. That lets you.
What's that again? I'm sorry.
I think Zendesk is another one.
Yeah, there's how about what's it called? It's more Spiceworks, doesn't it?
Spiceworks, yeah.
Yeah, so Zendesk, and a lot of them have a free tier, but they're fairly limited kind of thing. Especially But Spiceworks, I believe, don't they also have it? But you have to watch ads and stuff like that, so that may not be the best. So there's like a help desk one that you might be able. That's really not technically a ticket system, but yeah, you can just type free ticket.
Or someone just pointed out here that they did write their own in Alpha Anywhere, so that's your other option.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tricky part is that ticket systems start simple and they get complex really quick too, especially when you want to say, oh, only these people can see these tickets and things. But there's like open source ones. These are open source ticket systems called OS Ticket. And they've got a lot of nice features, graphs and stuff like that. So. But I think the real tricky part of ticket systems is that if you're working with one customer or it's an internal one, big deal. But if you all of a sudden have 3 customers and you need separate tickets for each one and you need to have them only see their tickets, then you got to start getting into complexity as it continues to go ahead from there. So,
excellent. Okay, now sort of another one, totally different topic, but this person is interested in adding attachments to a database through a UX control.
Oh, great. Awesome. That's great. Alpha is really good to do that. So you have 2 different methods, and I'm going to highly recommend you use method number 2. So you can do 2 things. You can store the images is it a file or an image? I'm sorry.
It says attachment, so we'll assume some sort of document, even if it's not
let's say a document. It doesn't matter. In your database, you can create what's called a blob field, and you can store the actual data inside that attachment in your database. Highly recommend you kind of move away from that. You can do that. It's simple. Alpha supports it, but you really want to use external attachments. And what's cool is there's a lot of support in both grids and UXs to do that. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and create a UX component real quick. And let's just use a blank one here. And then I'm going to go to my controls here, and I can start adding controls, but I'm going to use a trick where I'm going to click text box. I'm going to make sure I create multiple new controls, and down here you have this cool one called populate list from a table. So I want it to build this for me, so I don't want to create all these fields. I'm busy. I got things to do. I got people to talk to. So I'm going to go ahead and go to, let's say, application. Okay, so we click that. And let's see, I don't think there's any, so I'll just fake it from here. Okay, so I can click that, and then what this is basically going to do is create a UX for me, all ready to go. It's tied it, it's done the data binding, everything else, I can just run it, and if I have data in there, and I don't know, do I have any data? I don't have any data, so that's not a very effective one, but I'll still use it to kind of show you what's going on here. Okay. So one of the cool things about Alpha is, again, the action JavaScript capabilities. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add what's called a file upload download item here, okay? And then I would tie that to a field in my database that would hold the file name. So this is a built-in component for Alpha. Now this is more for desktop web. When we're talking mobile, there's a different way to do it, but I want to just focus on desktop web for this there. I believe that's what they're going for. So you would tie this field to actually a field in your database which would hold the file name. Now what I can do is I can go here, add a, let's see, a other control button, and I'm going to go attach file. Okay, so I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to click add new action, and I'm going to type file upload. Now, there's 2 types of file upload. Now, I'll come back and talk about this in a moment. There's file upload, which is your quick and dirty simple one. Then there's something called file upload user defined, which is very, very powerful. So I'm just going to click file upload. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is say, okay, I'm going to do all the things, but I need to know a few things. The first thing I need to know is where's your target, meaning where is that control I put on there, because there's a special control that has to be on there. So you'll notice how I added that file upload control on there, then I added the big button to do that. Now, where am I sending this to? And this is really cool. Am I sending it to the server? So it's going to go to that server. Or am I sending it to Amazon S3? Now, the consideration here, and I don't want to get too in the weeds, but consideration here is that if you're using the Alpha application server, standalone, then you're up in a folder. You can put stuff in a subfolder, off to the races, go from there. If you're using IIS or Alpha Cloud, it becomes a different animal because you don't naturally have access to be able to read and write data from folders on IIS within there. Now, are there ways to set it up? Yes, there's ways, and it takes more steps, but I just want to give you a heads up. But you could also say Amazon S3, set up an Amazon S3 bucket, and what's cool about this is we'll actually take the file, put it up on Amazon 3, grab the URL for that position, and put it in the database for you. And the cool thing is now Amazon S3 is managing that file, so it's taking all the file upload. You're taking sort of work off your server. I'm going to leave it for server right now, but the way to go there. Then I can set allowed file extensions, the disallowed file extension. It wants to know of upload file, so I'm going to click here and say it's going to go into my file attachments folder, right? Then what happens if the file exists? I'm going to overwrite it, or I'm going to rename it, and then a bunch of other things there. Now once I've got, let's see what I miss here. Oh, then also it's telling me stored file name.
I think it's looking for the control in which to store the file name.
And do I put in? Yeah, in this case, just to show you, this is where it's going to put in the full URL, or I can say just the short file name, and what it's going to do is only store the short file name, which is usually what I want to do. Is all I want to know is what that file name is, because I might move it in the future kind of scenario. But then I have to tell it where is
it's one up, control
there it is.
File name. Yep.
I'm going to put it like in my credit info XML, which would probably be name file name kind of thing. So I click OK, save it, okay. And I'm going to call this file upload _UX. Okay. Now I'm going to go to live preview because, by the way, working preview, it's not going to work because you can't do file uploads in working preview, but we'll try and file up there. So I'm going to create a new record. I'm going to go ahead and say new record, and then I'm going to go in, I'm going to put in, this there, and I'm going to click attach file. You'll notice that it opened up this for me. I'll click here. Go to my desktop, I'll add that test data here, and upload. Okay, so notice, here's my file name. Behind the scenes, what it's done is it's literally uploaded that to my server. In fact, I can go, since I'm running in live preview, I'm going to go to C, A5 Web Root, live preview, which is where it's kind of running right now. And I'll go, does it upload it yet? Maybe I have to save it. Oh, you know what? I picked a wrong table there, but did I do this here? File uploads. Yeah, I think it hasn't uploaded it to this directory here, but it handles all that for you. And this error is not the file upload. This error is because the application date can't be null. It's a database restriction there. So as you can see, that's all you would need to do it. Now, I want to talk about the other option you have is what's called file upload user defined. Okay, it's very simple. What's kind of cool is multiple files can be uploaded, etc. But it has a very powerful capability in here, which is after it uploads the files, it will call an XBasic function. And in that XBasic function, it will give it a list of file names, and that allows you to then do what you want to do with those file names. So for instance, I have a number of clients that say, okay, I've got I'm an insurance person, I've got a policy number. And what happens is when someone uploads a file, I want to actually do two things. One is I want to save the original file name, but then in my folder, I want to store it in a specific folder. And in that folder, I want to give it an incremental ID and attach the date, or certain little post-processing kind of steps. Well, what's cool with after upload, you can then run a script that will say, okay, here's the file that's been uploaded, testdata.exe. Then I can take my session variables and other things like that, and then I can rename the file, store it in a different folder, and then insert this data into the database and save it all in an XBasic scripting. So it's a very powerful tool to allow you complete control over that upload process to do things. So what often I'll do is I'll save the real file name as a file, and I'll give it a unique ID number, so I never have to worry about that file being changed, but it always looks like the original file name. So I could have 10 document.doc is on my system, and the person would say, oh, it's document.doc, but underneath it, it has a unique ID and stuff like that. Now, along with that, there's also an add action called file download, which then you just tell it the type. Usually it's like there's a UX component has the file name, like I'm going to do the file name here. And then I can give it like, oh, that's where I stored the actual file name. So this is the idea of what I want to download it. This is where it's at, that folder, and then other things like that. So there's not only can you upload files, you can download it. And there's an equivalent set of functionality in grids. So you can actually put it in grids also. So this is in a UX, but you can also perform the same methodologies within a grid in there. So that's a quick and dirty overview of file uploads. There's a lot of features and capabilities behind the scenes that you would enjoy, and hopefully that gives you a little indicator of what you want, or a direction on where you need to go.
That is terrific. Thank you very much, Dion. And we have come to the end of our time. So I know it flew by today, didn't it?
Jeez.
So anyway, thank you very much for presenting. Thank you everyone who attended, especially those of you who asked questions. If we didn't get to your question, you would like us to answer it, please send your question to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com, and we'll be happy to look into it. Today's session was recorded, and you can find a copy of recordings at videos.alphasoftware.com, as well as on YouTube. If you do a search for Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A, you will find all of our webinars. So thank you again. Again, we are not going to have a webinar next week, but we will be back the following week. Is this correct, Ian? Or
that is correct. I have
fantastic.
It's like Willie Nelson. I'm on the road again.
Fantastic. We'll see you a week from Wednesday then.
Yeah, we'll have an hour where I'm going to put up this slide and just play that song over and over. We've licensed it. So if you're bored, log in. Don't expect a lot of fireworks, but you can enjoy me without me being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
All right. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.